Torah Garden, speaking the absolute truth. Torah Nation.
Shalom, 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 Yahusha and Yahuah. Listen, make no mistake about it. We at it again. Make no mistake about it. Out of the mouth of the prophet, Babylon is fallen. Listening to none other than Hezekiah. Song is entitled Freedom's Wind 1.5. Listen, Babylon is fallen. And listen, if you are not in this witness, yes, I'm talking the witness, I can only say what my Father gives me to say. I can only declare that which he has given unto me. He has told me to warn you that you must receive this witness. You must be born again of the water, the Ruach HaKodesh. You must receive the Ruach HaKodesh, the water and the blood. Listen, I have nothing new. Everything Yahuah gives me is going to bring you back to the witness. Yahusha and Yahuah, it's the renewed covenant. Listen, Yaakov, Yahuah's firstborn, must be born again. Listen, we got to come back to the covenant and the witness of Yahusha HaMashiach. Our fathers made a deal. We got to honor that contract, but you got to come in through Hamashiach. Yahuah, in the name of Yahusha HaMashiach, I pray for this people that are under the sound of my voice. Yahuah, I pray in the name of Yahusha HaMashiach that you would take the reins of my lips and the reins of my tongue and reign. Yahuah, I pray in the name of Yahusha HaMashiach that I would not cause anyone to stumble, anyone to be turned out of the way, anyone to come up lame. You have called me to preach the witness. You have not called me to be a motivational speaker. Yahuah, you called me to cry loud and to spare not, to lift up my voice like a trump in Zion, to warn the people. Listen, Yahuah, I pray that those that you have chosen would receive this word in Emunah. They would receive this word in faith. Yahuah, I pray that they would recognize the importance of being sealed. You have to be sealed. Yahuah, and you have sealed those who received the witness. Yahuah, we made a deal. I made a deal. I'm in this Yahuah. I'm in this Yahuah to stay. I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Yahuah, my strength and my redeemer. We made a deal. Listen, Yahusha and Yahuah, you can't escape this. You have to come via the witness. You made a deal. Your forefathers made a deal. They made a contractual agreement which they broke. But Yahuah, who is rich in mercy, wherewith the mercy with which he loved us, when we were yet astray as a people in sin, he sent Yahusha HaMashiach to be king and priest. That high priest forever that replaced the high priesthood of Adam. The high priesthood of Aaron. That priesthood decayed. That priesthood faded away. That priesthood was lost at the destruction of the temple and even before. Listen, you got to understand that even when he confronted Eli, he had told Eli that the priesthood would leave. Listen. Yahusha is that high priest forever. He is that one that mediates between us and the Father. He is the one who comes with the sacrifice on our behalf that gives us the right to stand before Yahuah Eluah, right? As we have received the blood atonement, right? Heart has been changed. Taking away the stony heart. putting into us a new heart of flesh. And not only that, he has given us his Ruach HaKodesh to those who ask. Listen, I have received the Ruach HaKodesh. I have been baptized in water, and I have received the blood atonement. Listen, are you sealed? Brew, you got to understand this. And not just brews. Gentiles, you got to understand this. You got to be sealed. You have to be sealed. You have to be sealed by Yahuwah's Ruach HaKodesh. See, it ain't just enough to receive the witness. It's not just enough to receive the baptism. Because if it were, then Yahuwah would not have needed to say to the 12 that he found preaching Yehukhanan's baptism, have you received the Ruach HaKodesh? Right? If it was not necessary, he wouldn't have said nothing to the brothers. the Bantu Hebrew. They said, we haven't even much heard of a Ruach HaKodesh. Shaul said, let me put you aside. Let me baptize you again in the name of Yahusha Mashiach for the remission of your sins. Right? And then let me preach a little bit and explain a little bit to you. And then let me lay hands on you so you can receive the Ruach HaKodesh and be established in this witness. Listen, if it was not necessary, would not have done it. This witness is everything. This witness is everything. And you know, again, Ezra learned this witness is only for a few. Right? Yahuwah has prepared a people in righteousness, a few, to receive this eternal reward, right? This new Aretz and this new Shamayim, to serve in a righteous kingdom in the earth, right? Where we will no longer have to. We can take our spears and bend them into pruning hooks, because we ain't gonna study war no more. Come on, listen. This kingdom is a righteous kingdom. This kingdom is where Emunah remains, continues, and dwells, where belief in the truth of the Torah of Yahuwah. Everybody in this kingdom has received the witness. And the people that are in this kingdom have endured to the end. Right? We don't put our hope in what we see. We don't put our hope in gaining this world. Listen, Shaul said, it's all I have to hope for is what I see in this world to receive as an inheritance. In its wicked, corruptible, dying state, I am miserable. Listen, I am miserable. I am of most men miserable. But see, Shaul recognized that there is something to the witness. He recognized for him to live as a Mashiach, but him to die is gain. He understood that this witness brings results. It brings assurances, right? It leaves us in a place where we never have to cast away our confidence, right? We don't have to lose hope, right? Because we know that we're going to have to endure, but we know we're going to receive a prize. Because in this witness, it comes with great recompense, repayment of reward. Listen, you have need to suffer, son. You're going to have to go through. He told Ezra, listen, this is the battle of those that are in this earth. The battle that they have is that they have to overcome in order to be a part of this new heaven and this new earth. In order to achieve this eternal life, listen, you got to understand that you got to first and foremost be born again of the water and the Ruach HaKodesh. You have to have his Ruach HaKodesh. Yahusha said you got to be born again of the water. Yehukhanan said, Yahusha said you got to be born of the water and the Ruach HaKodesh. Yehukhanan said when he saw Yahusha baptized, he beheld the Ruach HaKodesh descending upon him like a dove from the Shamayim, right? That was Yahuwah's Ruach setting its approval on Yahusha Mashiach's witness. And then Abba Father said, listen, this is my beloved son, my Torah, that was in my bosom, in whom I'm well pleased. Listen, you got to understand, you got to receive this witness. You got to receive this witness, right? Right? And it ain't for everybody. Everybody ain't going to get this. They're going to be people that we going to watch, love, and die, and not having received this witness. We going to have people that we love that are in Christianity that's going to die, and they ain't going to have received this witness. But you know what? It ain't because Yahuah ain't trying to make it available to them, right? But you know, in their pride, right, in their own willingness not to hear the word of truth, right, they lost. This witness is for a few. Excuse me. This witness can't be Christianity. It can't be. You can't live in disobedience to Yahuwah Shabbat and be his people. You can't live in disobedience to Yahuwah Shabbat. Listen, Yahuwah said don't have no other else before him, right? And then he said you got to remember the Shabbat. Then he gave you 4 verses. I think it was 4 verses in reference to the Shabbat. So you put another else before him because his name ain't Yesu. His name ain't Jesus, right? Earth pig. His name ain't Jesus. His name ain't Yesu, Jesus, Zeus. He's not the God of the Romans. He's not the God of Christianity. I mean, Yahuwah isn't. But their God. See, this is not that. So you can't be violating Torah and then expect to enter into his kingdom. Right? Yahuwah's given a word to wake you up. You better wake up. You better accept the Torah, the Besorah that he has written, that he's given. You better receive his revelation, his truth. Listen. If Yahuwah gives you a chance to live, right, having been informed of this witness, and you still rebel, this witness is for the chosen. I'm so glad that you gave me a stroke. You reinforced for me the necessity of the witness. He brought me to a place where I understood that I needed to make some serious changes, right? Sacrificial things. I needed to crucify some things, right? Yeah, I was in the witness. Yeah, I was in Torah. I was breaking free from Christianity, right? I mean, I was, going as I understood, right? You know, feeling like it was still all right, cuss, corrupt communication, right? You'll give me a stroke. And then, here's the thing, right? He gave me his Ruach HaKodesh. And it's interesting because every time I am in a place, when I was in a place where I recognized that there was something that I must have done, I would repent right away. Right? And, even as I had the stroke, I knew that there was something wrong. Right? And in my head, because I couldn't talk, I began to go before Yahuwah. Right? Praying in the Ruach. Because, Yahuwah's Ruach was in me. Right? Because anytime you make a decision to go in the way of Yahuwah, having received his books, the Ruach will leave you. It'll leave you as slow-mo. Because it's not going to participate in wickedness. Right? Right? Because he ain't going to share the temple until the temple was clean again. Right? Yahuwah told me in the Ruach, hey, I got this. Don't worry about it, I got this. instantaneously, he did a miracle in me. I know I was Yahuwah's chosen. You think I went back? No, I dug in. Right? See, Yahuwah had to bring me to a place. He brought me to the place that I am today. But that's because I've clung to the witness. Right? Because I recognize this witness is true. Right? So, Ezra. Let's get into Ezra. Right? And I think we only covered like about 6 verses last time. Right? But Ezra, right? Yahuwah had spoken to Ezra about how the kingdom, how the arights and those that operate in the arights, right, are like seed sown, plant sown, right? In fact, let's pick up where we left. I think we were down a little bit farther. Yeah, this was where we left off, I think. Verse 41, right? He says, as the husbandman soweth much seed upon the ground. Now the ground he's speaking to is the hearts of men. Right? Right? He sows seeds into the ground and he plants many trees. Right? Yahuwah. He's a husbandman. Right? He tends to the plants. I told you that there's things that I've planted that I learned that I needed to prune, cut away portions of it in order for it to continue to thrive and grow. Right? And I began to implement those things. And I began to see a bigger, fuller harvest at the top because all the nutrients and everything that the plant was needing to flow up was being pulled to the sides at the base of the plant, right, where they weren't going to produce fruit. So that needed to be pruned off, right, so that it can continue to shoot up further where it's supposed to go. And again, you're going to prune back anything that does not bud, anything that's not bearing fruit, right? So he was talking to Ezra about the condition of the world, because he told Ezra, he said, listen, the bottom line is that the world that's come is made for a few. The world that Yahuwah has created where there's mankind now, this is made for the many. Right? But only those who are true to Torah, faithful to the witness, right, will partake in the world to come. And Ezra at one point was so caught up in the world that he was in, the time that he was in, the season, right? The dispensation, because everything is broken down in dispensation, or in Enoch, weeks, right? So when you go to Enoch, the 93rd chapter, and listen, if you're going to go to Enoch, you better go in the Sefer, right? Sefer is complete. And I'm going to tell you something, everybody should have one of these, a Sefer. You really should. You should have a Sefer, right? It's got the closest set apart names that have been transliterated, right? So, or what it would look like in the Hebrew. And you got vowel points and all that other stuff that it's still kind of ishous. It's Jewishish, but the idea is that it's the set apart names, right? But the thing is that you get these other sephers, these other writings and recordings that Yahuwah has given, right, and you get them in here in their entirety. So here you have Enoch receiving understanding in reference to the seed being sown, right, the sowing and reaping process, right, and we understand again that he was concerned about the time that he was in, right? And again, the times, especially in Enoch, that 93rd chapter is broken down into weeks, from the beginning of the age to the end of the age, right? To the beginning of the world to the end of the world, right? And according to Enoch, we're in the seventh, the end of the second week, right? Because Yahuah is establishing righteousness from an everlasting plan of righteousness, right? Right? Because we already seen the perversion come, right? The world has become extremely perverse, right? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And it's interesting. Once at one time, it wasn't noticeably visible in the churches, right, 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 right. It was allowed and condoned, but it wasn't as overt as it was. Because see, perversion has been ever since the end of Yahusha's departure. Yahusha's departure, right? Having established an everlasting kingdom, because he's taken the dominion from hast, right? But he went to the Father to establish a people who would operate in the aright with his Ruach HaKodesh. At which point Hasatan, he got the boot, so he knew that his time was short. So he amped it up. Yeah, he went in on Jerusalem. He destroyed the temple. He took everything and took it to Rome, right? And Titus Vespasian had the revelation. He saw the cross, and it said "conquer" in the name of this symbol, the cross. So they went out killing people. They went out butchering people, right? Yeah, if they didn't accept the Christian faith, they were killed, nailed to a stake. They were paled. They were raped in the name of this new religion, right? This idolatry, right? Constantine established the change of Yahuah Shabbat to Sunday, right? That occurred in a dispensation of weeks. That was the 6th week. Actually, it was the beginning until the end of the 6th week, right? The perverse generation rose. There was a man that rose up out of that, right? Right? There was Titus Vespasian, and then there was Constantine, right? What did he do? Enoch. We looking at weeks. This is a review, but it's an understanding of weeks, right? It's understanding of weeks, right? He says, Enoch 93, Yahusha Hamashiach. He says, then in the 5th week, and that's the 9th verse of the 93rd chapter. It talks about the 4th week. Subsequently, in the 4th week, during its completion, right, the dispensation of time, Ezra wanted the end of the world to happen at his dispensation, but it was not possible. Right, Yahuah said, listen, don't worry about what happened before, and don't try to figure out when it's going to happen now. You just need to understand that you need to live a righteous and set apart life, a chaste life, right? And you'll be a recipient in this kingdom. And you just need to be available to do whatever I tell you to do, to continue to bring a word to the people of Yahuah, right? But do what you're doing, right? So he says here, and that, he says, subsequently the 4th week, during its completion, the visitation of the Holy One and the righteous shall be seen. Yahusha. Right? Right? The order of generations after generation and the habitation shall be made for them. Right? This is everything that happens in that week. Right? Right? Actually, that's Shlomo. That 4th week is Shlomo. And the generations, right? So the tribes, the 12 tribes, and the lineage, right? The generation, right? He says, and the generation of an habitation shall be made for them, right? right? The land of Canaan, the land in Africa, the land that Yahuah has given to the nation, right? Forever. See, and that's why, these Gentiles, man, listen, you can't go into the land that Yahuah has given to his people eternally and expect him not to judge you. See, because when we turn to him, which we have done as a nation of people, we recognize him, right? Because you got to turn to him as individuals first. See, before, it was about the nation bringing in their sacrifice unto Yahuah, right? Right? It was a nation. They had to come together, and they had to do the harvest. They had to do Sukkah. They had to do Pentecost, but they had to do it together as a nation, right? In order to find forgiveness as a people, right? Because they were all sin conscious. They all had to present an offering to the high priest, but there was this sin consciousness they had to do as a nation, right? That reunified the nation, right? But Yahuah has dealt with individuals through the witness of Yahusha Mashiach, right? Right? If my people, which are called by my name, the people that are called by his name are those who have received the witness of Yahusha Mashiach. They have been called into this witness in his name, Yahusha's name, through faith in his name, right? So there are those who Yahuah has called and has chosen, right? But it says here, and habitations were made for them in Africa, right? He says, then in the 5th week, during its completion, towards the end of the 5th week, a house of glory and of dominion shall be erected forever, right? House of glory and dominion, right? Right? Read a house. Yahusha HaMashiach has established his house, his dominion, forever because he came into the Eretz. He took the keys of death and hell from Hasatan, having gained victory over death, and he established and erected the house of glory. And it's not a physical house, right? It's not a physical house. This is a people, right? And dominion shall be erected forever. This is a dominion that has been taken from Hasatan. Adam yielded the dominion when he sinned against Yahuah, when he violated Yahuah's Torah. Yahuah took his Ruach HaKodesh from him, right? Right? Adam was put out of the garden, could no longer eat of the fruit that would give him eternal life. He was put out, him and Havah, right? But that dominion has been taken back through Yahusha Mashiach's victory, right? He has established a way to establish his people, right? He has made it possible for individuals to receive Yeshua, right? And these individuals will collectively make up a nation, right? And these individuals will be participants in the kingdom. Yaakov and Yehudah, and grafted in Gentiles. He was doing a new thing. This is a new thing. You got to understand this. This is a new thing, right? So he said, the house of glory and dominion shall be erected forever. And after that, in the sixth week, right? 6th week, all those who are in it shall be darkened, right? After Yahusha left, and after Shaul and, those who, were martyred or killed or, he said, listen, he says, all of those who are in it shall be darkened. So we're talking about the 6th week. We're talking about another period or dispensation of time. Excuse me. Another period, another dispensation of time, right? So he says here, after that, in the 6th week, all those who are in it shall be darkened, right? Right now, at this time, right, the nation had made a decision, right? Yahusha came to his own, but his own received him not. But for as many as received him, the remnant, at that dispensation, to them he gave power to be the sons of the Lord. Even them that believed on his name, right? But the nation, they continued in sin. Pharisees, Sadducees, oh, crucify him. Let his blood be upon us and our children, right? Judgment, right? He says, in the 6th week, all those who are in it shall be darkened, and the hearts of all of them shall be forgetful of the wisdom of righteousness that came through Yahusha Hamashiach. They going to forget it. They're going to forget the witness. They're going to become darkened. Listen, how come a people continued to suffer, right, from 70 AD up until the day that we're here now? Because they were forgetful of wisdom, right? They became Christians. They turned from Torah and started worshiping on Sunday. They accepted the name of God and Lord and Jesus and Jesus, right? Right? Accept those names. And they were forgetful of wisdom. He said, listen. And in it shall a man, right? That man, right? You have Titus Vespasian, right? And then not only Titus Vespasian, you had Constantine, right? Shall arise and shall come forth, right? And during its completion, right? He shall burn the house of dominion, right? That's the takeover in 70 AD in Rome. That's the time when Titus Vespasian, under the leadership of the Roman Empire, the Roman Empire, right? Right? What did he do? He burned the house of dominion with fire. Right? He burnt the house, the physical building house. But see, Yahusha came to establish the house of dominion, right? Which is spiritual house first. Because the house of dominion was established in us and for us. Right? Right? We are of the house of dominion. Right? He says, and all the race of the elect root, right? He's the vine, we're the branches. All the race of the elect root, right? The race of the elect root shall be dispersed. Now we're going to be scattered, right? The elect root, right? Because we are the elect, right? Even though we are in, our ancestors was in unrighteousness, right? It still doesn't change the fact that he had chose Yaakov, right? But see, even in Yaakov, he had a remnant, right? He had a remnant. Not all Yisrael is saved. He has a remnant. He has those who are going to receive the witness, who's going to come through faith in Yahusha Hamashiach. See, Ezra wanted the end of the world to come in his dispensation, right? And Ezra's dispensation was the 4th week. You know, 4th week. Actually, probably the 4th and the 5th week. Because it says during the completion of the house of glory, which was Yahusha, doing its completion, right? Right? Doing its completion, right? He says, the house of glory and dominion shall be erect forever. Forever. Right? So, it's the end of the 5th week, which means that Esdras' period was probably the beginning of the 5th week, because he was between the hand and the heel, right? That's what Yahuah said to Ezra. You're between the hand and the heel, right? And we understand between the hand and the heel would be the halfway point, right? And we know that there are 10 weeks, right? He says, because the 10th week is after this, on the 7th day of the 10th week, there shall be an everlasting judgment, which shall be executed on all which, that's the end, right? So the 10th week is the end, right? 10th week is the end. Ezra was between the hand and the heel. He was in between, right? Ezra wanted the world to be, he wanted the judgment to be now, right? And the world be brought into immortality, right? But he was just at the halfway point. Well, you listen, you just at the halfway point, right? There's still the need to have the revelation, the revealing of my Hamashiach, Yahusha, right? And then Yahusha has to be the propitiation. He has to be the mediator. He has to be the high priest. He has to be the lamb, and his blood has to be sacrificed. He has to die for his people. He has to be raised, having the keys of death and hell, right? And his kingdom and his dominion established forever. Ezra wanted it to happen then. So weeks are periods and times, right? And we're in a dispensation, a week, a period of time. And we're in that time after perversion, right? Week 12, after that, in the 7th week, a perverse generation shall arise, and abundance shall be his deeds, and all his deeds shall be perverse. That's what we're in now, right? It's perverse. Constantine, right? Christianity perversed it. Then you got the birth of Islam. Then you got the birth of the Jewish state, right? Right? This is wickedness. Because all of these are anti-Yahuah, keeping his Torah and his Shabbats. Or not having even received, you believe that Yahushua HaMashiach's witness is coming. That's everybody. That's the perverse generation, right? And with that perverseness, because anything that's anti-Yahuah is perverse, right? Anything that's anti-Yahuah's covenant Torah purpose is perverse, right? So the perverse nation, the perversion that occurs, the perverse generation shall arise, and abundant shall be its deeds. Oh yeah. What Constantine and Christianity did was perverse. What Constantine and Christianity did was perverse. The Inquisitions, the Inquisitors, right? Right? Those who persecuted, those who did not keep Christianity, right? They were considered heretics, or it was heresy, right? So, them brews were Torah keepers. Them brews were Shabbat keepers. They were gathered up. They were inquisitive. They were tortured by those that the Catholic Church, Christianity, right, had uh, um, through papal bulls and edicts to torture the Hebrews and all those who did not adhere to the Roman Catholic Christian Orthodoxy's way of doing things. So you know that was targeted to Hebrews. It's targeted to Hebrews. That's why over in Spain and Portugal, you know, you still got evidence of that, right? You still got brews up there in Spain and Portugal. Still meeting in the same place, right? In the churches where they were tortured in the bottoms. They were burned at the stake in the main hall area on Sundays. I need to look at B'nai Israel's Hidden Hebrew series. You need to look at that Spanish Inquisition series. You know, it's perversion. It's been perverse still. Now, right, at the end, right, he says, during the completion of this perversion, during the completion of the time of the Gentiles, right, it's completion. It's the time of the Gentiles. The time of the dominion of the Gentiles. Right. He says, listen, during its completion, a righteousness shall be selected from an everlasting plan of righteousness. Righteousness selected from Yahusha Mashiach, which is that plan of righteousness, right? Right? And it shall be selected from an everlasting plan of righteousness, and to them shall be given the sevenfold doctrine of creation. That's the week we in. The end of the seventh week. Hastily making our way into the eighth week. For after there should be another week, an eighth week of righteousness, which shall be given the sword to execute judgment and justice upon all the oppressors. That's Yahushua HaMashiach coming to gather all those who oppress the nation these 2,000 plus years. So Ezra, he wanted it to happen during this time. But Yahuwah says, no. You're only in the fifth week. At the end of the fifth week. You're in the beginning of the fifth week, actually. Right? And I still got 5 more weeks to go. But see, Yahuwah calls a people out of a dispensation. Ezra and his righteous few were chosen out of the dispensation. Listen. Right? He says, at 41 again, as for the husbandman soweth much seed upon the ground, and planteth many trees, right? And yet the thing that is sown, good in his season. Ezra was the good in his season, right? The children that went into captivity because they were idolaters, because they did not want to give heed to the word that Ezra preached, right? They did not want to keep Yahuwah's commandments. They despised his commandments. Well, in that season, and during that time, Ezra was chosen from amongst them. Now, there was others, right? You had prophets and you had people that held to Torah, right? But you had people that went into captivity. Esdras had been in captivity 30 years and seen the wickedness of his people. We already know the priests left off in their duties because they was marrying Babylonian women. That's why the priesthood had to be replaced. Because as soon as they was offering sacrifices, even in their rebellion, right? But it got to the point where their rebellion was spewed over to the point where they just started marrying foreign women, right? And of course, they got to that point where they had to give up their foreign wives and reinstitute the priesthood, but that didn't last long, because then you had Alexander the Great come in and wipe out Darius and the prince of Persia, and take dominion and make everybody Hellenized, right? And then they slip right back into sacrifices of pigs and unclean animals in the temple, right? And then you had Maccabees come in there and wreak havoc over the Greeks, right? And then you had the Romans come in, and the Romans, they set up their puppet regimes. They brought in Edomite kings, right, over Jerusalem, right? And the Edomite kings, they put up their Edomite priest and of course Hebrew priest, right? They had their Pharisees and their Sadducees, right? They just disrupted. Even Shaul was a Pharisee. He wasn't even Levi. He was Benjamin, right? But here's the thing. It all happens in a season, right? He says, for yet the thing sown good in its season cometh not up, right? Right? Sown, right? But don't come up. Don't produce fruit. It don't even spring up, right? Because, even as a nation, the people would serve Yahuah, and then they would slip off a generation or two, and, they wouldn't be producing trees and fruit. And then all of a sudden, their enemy would come, and they would cry out to Yahuah as a nation. And Yahuah would turn around and deliver their enemies into their hands. And they would start back off again, doing right, good soil. But then eventually, their hearts would become hard. Well, their hearts would always be kind of jacked up because they had sin consciousness. Right? They had sin consciousness. They had what we don't have, who received the witness, a consciousness of sin. Right? So, he says in the season, neither do all that are planted take root. Even so is it them that are sown in the world. So that's where it is in the world. Listen, everybody ain't going to take root. We explored even how it is presented in Matthew. Sower went to sow. Hey, and you know what? Let's do something real quick. Let's go to Matthew. Look at Matthew, the 13th chapter again, but let's start at the 24th verse, right? We're going to get back to Ezra, because it all has to do with the witness. He says, another parable put forth he unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like unto, or Elua's way of doing things. So when he says the kingdom of heaven, it is Yahuwah's way of doing things. That's the way I look at it, right? So, in the way that Yahuwah do things, it's like unto a man which soweth good seed in his field, right? Sowing good seed, right? Seed is good. It's not bad seed, right? It's good seed. It's the truth. It's the Torah of truth, right? Yahuwah's called me to cry loud and spare not, to lift up my voice like a trumpet in Zion, and to sow good seed. Right? This seed, this word, this Masorah, this Torah is to be sown. Right? He says, good seed. Right? But while men slept, right? While they slept, right? Right. You know, because when you sleep, you're not alert. Yeah. When you're sleeping, you're not alert. You're not at your heightened awareness, right? I mean, subconsciously, you know, you can play scriptures at night and let that be your meditation. I've done that for years, all my life, well, most of my life. And play the scriptures at night and let it go, and it'll be your meditation because it'll go in. But you're not alert as if you were reading it, right? Right. So you know, here you got these men slept, right? Right, and his enemy came, right? When he was asleep, when he wasn't paying attention, right? But his enemy came, right? And sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. Enemy. Now, you know, when you sow weeds, you make it harder to harvest, right? Because you got the weeds growing up, you know, and you got wheat and tares, and the tares was, you know, it resembled the weed and how it grew, but it was evasive. It was a tare. It was a weed. It was designed to be a distraction, right? Like, oh, you think you're gonna grow? Oh, look, I'm gonna throw some tares in there, right? I'm gonna send some falsehoods. I'm gonna interject some lies. I'm gonna interject some things that are distractions. I'm going to interject some entertainment. I'm gonna put some stuff in there. It's gonna grow up, right? He says, but when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared also the tares. So you know you got the plant with the blades, and then you got these weeds and these tares that is sprung up too, right? He said unto me, he said, an enemy has done this. Enemy has come and sown these tares. You know, I got enemies that sow tares, even with the messages that I speak and give by the Ruach HaKodesh, right? Enemies, right? Sowing tares, right? Sowing tares. You give a word, you know, and you know you got these people come in and say, well, you don't have to do all of that. You ain't gotta listen to that. You ain't gotta be born again or no water, no Ruach HaKodesh. We don't even believe in the New Testament like that. Right. That's Constantine. That's Christian writing. You know, you don't have to believe that. Sowing tares, right? Growing up, right? He says, so the servant of the household came and said unto him, Sir, there's now not sow seed in the field? From whence are all his tares? He said unto me, an enemy have done this. The servant said unto him, wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? Shall we go and gather them up? No, don't touch them yet. Right? Don't touch them yet. Right? Because in the process of the gathering, right, you want to make sure that you can separate the real from the fake, the true from the phony. Right? He said, no, last while ye gather the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Can't have you. We'll let them grow together. Because, you know, Yahuah is the husbandman. See, Yahusha said, my father is a husbandman, right? He cuts off and he prunes. Right? See, you don't want to go in and start pulling stuff up because you know, these tares get intertwined with the roots of the wheat. They don't stop the wheat from growing, but you know, if you go to pulling up these tares, you may pull up the wheat. And if you pull the wheat out from its root, it's done. Right? Even when you transplant a plant from one condition to the next, you have to make sure that you be tender to the roots. Right? Because, you know, if you shift a plant in soil, right, and you expose that root for too long, you know, it's going to kill a plant. Right? You got to make sure that you're doing what's best for that plant and making sure that you keep that root protected. See, you know, that's another thing about working in gardens. You know, one of the nemesis is weeds. You know, and I told you I got some weeds that popping up in my backyard, in my gardens, man. But like, where did that come from? You know, just weeds. Just, you know, you pull them up and, you know, it seems like you pull them up, and 2 months later you got to pull them up again. Sometimes sooner than that, when we get a lot of rain, you know. I mean, look, but you know, it's a never-ending process. You know, you let the wheat grow with the tares. Again, Yahuah harvest, right? He says, nay, lest, while gathering up the tares, you root up also the wheat with them. Let them both grow together until the harvest. Let them both grow together. Right? Until the harvest. And at the time of the harvest, I will say to the reaper, right? Gather ye together first the tares, right? And bind them in bundles and burn them. Let me judge the tares. Now, the seed is the word. The word is the witness. Right? The word is, the seed is, right? The seed is Ephesians 1:13, in whom also trusted after that ye heard the word of truth, right? Yahusha is the word, right? In the beginning was the word. In the beginning was the word. Yahusha, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Yahuah, and the Word was Yahuah. The same was in the beginning with Yahuah. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. And light shined in darkness, and darkness comprehended it not. Verse 14, and that word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld its glory. The word made flesh. From the bosom comes the word of Yahuah, right? Into the womb of Mary, in Mary's egg, and introduced the physiological occurrence of the growth of a baby, Yahusha, the Word, made flesh, beheld his glory. He was the only begotten of the Father. Only begotten of the Father. Yahuah has sons, right? Yaakov is his firstborn son. Or Yaakov is his firstborn son. But Yahusha was the only begotten. We were born as a nation of people. But Yahusha is born because he is the seed, the only begotten, because he is the direct seed of Yahuah, right? But he says, only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So he's the word that's full of truth, right? So when you go back to Ephesians, right, you see he says, in whom also trusted after that you heard the word, Yahusha Hamashiach, made flesh, of truth, because he's full of grace and truth. It is the Basora. It is the good news, right, of your Yeshua. This is Yahusha. His word is the good news that brought your Yeshua, right? In whom you believed. You had to believe, right? You believed and were sealed with the Ruach HaKodesh of promise. This is that witness, right? This is that witness, right? This is that witness. This is that witness, right? This is what he was speaking of when he says, the gather ye first the tares and bind them in bundles. And then he says, but the wheat in barns, right? Those who have received the word are the wheat. Those that are the tares are the branches that Yahuah cuts off and gathers them up to be burned. The tares are those people who refuse to receive the word of truth, the Basora, the Torah of truth. These are the people who refuse to receive, right? Who refuse to receive, right, the word of truth, the Basora of Yeshua, right? They refuse to believe. And having been sealed, refusing to believe, prevented them from being sealed, right? So they were just tares to be burned, right? So back to Ezra. He says, he's talking about sown. Now he answers them and said, if I have found grace, let me speak. This is Ezra, right? Like as the husband's seed perish, if it come not up and receives not rain. Now listen, right? So. Ezra is making the assumption, right, that the seed, right, like as the husbandman, seed, Yahuah, the seed, the people, your people, right, the seed, the husbandman, seed perishes if it cometh not up and receive not rain due in its due season. So Ezra's saying, listen, you know, if you rain, you give them the rain, then, you know, the seed's going to produce fruit. Right? He said, like as the husbandman seeds perish, look, your people are perishing, right? Right? And they ain't coming up, right? Because they receive not rain in due season. As if Yahuwah is going to plant something in some ground, right, and not water it. That's why Ezra, Yahusha said, the prophets look to see what you see. Right? Because you see the son of Yahuwah. You see the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. See, they don't see it because they don't have the Ruach like that. Because the house of dominion hadn't been established. Yahusha Hamashiach had not been, listen. He says, concerning the Ruach HaKodesh, he says, this spake he of the Ruach HaKodesh, which they were to receive, but they had not received it yet, because Yahusha had not been glorified yet. So the Ruach HaKodesh was not received until Yahusha was glorified. Yahusha was raised from the dead, had all power in his hands, the keys of death and hell. He had his blood to offer up into the Shamaims, holies of holies, before Yahuah, right? And once he done that, he made it possible for the Ruach HaKodesh to come into the aright in men, right? But Ezra didn't have this clue. He didn't have this. Ezra, he's still talking about his dispensation, and he witnessed the wickedness of his dispensation, of his people. And he said to Yahuah, said, okay, Yahuah, listen. I answered then, and I said, if I found grace, let me speak. So Yahuah, you the husbandman, and your seed perishing. Hello, right? If it come not up, right, and receive not rain in due season, as if to suggest that Yahuah has not given it rain in due season, right? Or if there come too much rain and corrupt it, as if Yahuah going feed the plants that he planted. He the husbandman. He in charge of everything that the plant gets. Listen, right? You can kill a plant by overwatering it. Because what happens is that the plant in the soil gets too much water, and it creates like a rot at the root area. It's overload. That's why when you plant in pots, you need to plant in pots that have ways to remove or release the excess water that's in the plant, that's in the pot. Because if you don't, it'll create a rot. Right? Some instances it's like mold, then it'll kill the plant. Right? But if you got holes in it, you got to wait for that water to escape, because the ground needs the plant needs the moisture in order to facilitate growth. It don't need it to be saturated, right? It needs to be moist, right? And when there's too much water, it has to be released. Ezra suggested that Yahuah didn't water it, or he watered it too much. He says, and too much rain corrupts it, right? He says, even so perish man also which formed with thine hands. Ezra boy. Ezra's like, okay, even so perish men also which is formed with thine hands, and is called by thine own image. See, Ezra don't have the Ruach HaKodesh. See, because in the Ruach HaKodesh, I know that way of thinking is not righteous. Right? And it's because of the dispensation that Ezra's in. Right? It's the dispensation he's in. It's his lack of having what we have as the comforter. The Ruach HaKodesh of truth. See, Ruach HaKodesh of truth is going to reveal the truth of what Yahuah is doing. It may not give you the details, but it will give you a comfort in what he has done, because you have emunah in what Yahuah says, right? So you're not disrupted into believing something that just is absurd. It's absurd to think that Yahuah plants and does not water. It's just an absurd concept to think that Yahuah plants and then overwaters. Right? I mean, right? So he says, and then he says, you formed them. And you called them your own image. They your handiwork. You're the potter and they're the clay. Right? Right? He says, because thou art like unto him. You are like him, right? Because you made him in your image. Right? For whose sake thou hast made all things. You made him for this world. And everything in it. Right? Right? Made all things. And like him unto the husbandman's seed. Made him like your seed. Still making arguments for you was patient and merciful, O Lord. Right? He's patient and merciful, O Lord. Right? Right? First he says that Yahuah plants and he don't water enough, and then he waters too much. And then he says, you made these people. They're formed by your hand. They're after your image, after your likeness. Right? You made everything for them. They're your seed. Then he has the nerve to say, be not wroth with us. You don't be angry with me, but I'm just, I'm just telling it like it is to me. They used to say, tell it like a TIG. I don't know what TIG is, but he said, listen, be not wroth with us, but spare thy people. Have mercy upon thine own heritage. Now, he's speaking of the nation. He goes from talking as if he's speaking of the whole world, but his main concern is Israel, the nation, right? Yahuah's people, right? He says, be not wroth with us, and spare your heritage, right? Let me see. Let's do this. Spare not thine inheritance. In let's see. Was it Isaiah? Yeah, Isaiah 47. Isaiah 47, right? He says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground," right? "There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate," right? "Take the millstone and grind meal, uncover the locks, make bare the legs, uncover the thighs, and pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man," right? "As for our Redeemer, the Yahuah of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Yasharal. Sit thou silent and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I was wroth with my people, and I had polluted mine inheritance, and given them into thine hands." Right? Children of Israel, given into captivity to the Chaldeans, to the Babylonians, right? "I was wroth with my people," right? "I have polluted mine inheritance," right? So Esdras says, "Be not wroth, but spare thy people, and have mercy upon thine inheritance," right? "For thou art merciful unto thy creature." Now, he's saying here in Isaiah 47 and 6, "I was wroth with my people," right? "Who were taken into captivity, right? I have polluted mine inheritance. I've allowed them to come up on the midst of you for some 70 years. And for us who are in Babylon, even to this day, right? Right. Now, some of us have come out of Babylon and escaped. Some of us have come out of Babylon and escaped. Some of us still dabble in Babylon, still hold on to Babylonian ways, still try to do what Babylon do. Right. He says, "I was wroth with my people. I have polluted my inheritance, and given them into thine hands, and thou didst show them no mercy." See, Ezra witnessed the Babylonians not showing the nation mercy, right? "And upon the ancient hast thou very heavily weighed thy yokes." So you made the old people work, right? "And thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to heart." You figured you was going to be in this position forever. But you didn't really consider that, I allowed this for a season. You didn't lay that to heart. "Neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasure, that dwell carelessly, that say in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. I shall not sit in as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children." See, that's what the nation did. Right? So, you will let them come take the nation into captivity, his heritage, right? But, they got the big head. We beat the children of Yahuah. He gave them to us. We're going to do what we want to. We're going to put heavy yokes on the old people. We're going to put heavy yokes on the old people. We're going to do wickedly by them, right? He said, therefore hear now this, thou that art given to pleasure, that dwellest carelessly, that say in thine heart, I am, and there's none else beside me. Pride, right? Right? There's none else. I shall not sit as a widow. I ain't gonna be like them. I made them a widow, but I'm not gonna be like them. Yeah, they're young men. They're daughters. I made them widows, but I ain't gonna be like them. We ain't gonna be like them. He says, I shall not sit as a widow, right? Neither shall I know the loss of children. I ain't gonna know the loss of children, right? But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day. Now this is prophetic too. Right? This happened to Babylon during the time of Ezra, right? Because they were defeated, right? Right? But you gotta understand, this is prophetic. This is us, right? He said, listen. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day. Whose judgment's going to come, right? The loss of your children and widowhood. You're going to lose your children. And then you're going to become widows, right? I'm going to take your young men and your husbands and your children, your sons. I'm going to take your husbands and your sons and leave you widows. He says, they shall come unto thee in their perfection for the multitudes of their sorcery and for the great abundance of their enchantment. Listen, ain't that these wicked Babylonian heathens that we serve right now? That we don't serve. I don't serve them, but you know what I'm saying, right? The nation that we're in, right? He says, for thou hast trusted in the wickedness, thy wickedness. Who's trusted in your wickedness? These wicked, diabolical, heathen nations have trusted in this. I think it's going to be around forever. America thinks she's going to be on the top forever. She Babylon, right? Right? Britain just lost the London Bridge has fallen. Right? You got the Prince Charles in there now, right? No, they talking about a reboot. Yeah, you was gonna reboot it, but you know what? He gonna sweep through with the sword with Yahusha Mashiach first, because he gonna serve up these nations, right? So what he's saying? He says, enchantment of your sorcerers. He says, for thou hast trusted in the wickedness, thou hast said, none see me, I'm going to do what I want to do. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. Your understanding is totally perverted you. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and there is none else beside me. He said, therefore shall evil come upon thee, and thou shalt not know from whence it's come. Yeah. You don't know if it's coming from Russia. You don't know if it's coming from China. You don't know if it's coming from North Korea. You don't know if it's coming from Iran. You don't know if it's coming from Syria. You don't know. He said, evil shall come upon thee, and thou shalt not know from whence it arises. And mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou hast not known. Listen, right? Stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitudes of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. See, you've been doing this for a long time, right? America has been doing this for a long time. She's been doing this for a long time. She's been interfering in other nations for a long time. Listen, this is no, and you know what? Not just her, Britain, all these other nations, have been doing the same thing. He says, therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it rises, and mischief shall fall upon thee, and thou shalt not be able to put it off. You ain't gonna be able to get rid of this, right? And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now in thy enchantments, and in the multitudes of thy sorceries, where thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so thou mayest prevail. Thou art weary in the multitudes of thy counsel. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly protagonizers stand up and save thee from the thing that's going to come upon. Why? Because of what you did to his heritage. Right? See, and Ezra witnessed the deliverance of the nation by Persia, right? And how that has translated over to the nation being restored for a period, right? But, you know, it's prophetic. Isaiah was prophetic concerning the nation of Yahusha in the weeks, the dispensation that we're in, because the Ezra, right? Ezra, he's in the middle, right? So he says, be not wroth with us, but spare thy people and have mercy upon thine own inheritance. You had mercy, right? And at the time Ezra was into this captivity for 31 years, right? He wanted Yahuah to end it then. Yahuah's got weeks, right? He says, for thou art merciful unto thy creature. And we just read in Isaiah 47 where Yahuah is promised judgment, right, for his heritage. But listen. It's because they've returned to the witness of Yahusha. It's because they've turned and received the witness. It's because they received the witness. They received the witness of Yahusha Mashiach. They are individuals who are collectively a nation having received the witness of Yahusha, right? So Yehuda has to receive the witness of Yahusha in order to be his. Again, you don't matter if you go back to Africa, if you go anywhere on the continent. It doesn't matter if you haven't received the witness of Yahusha Mashiach. You just leaving one nation going to another nation. You leaving one country going to another country. And you know, going in Africa, there ain't no guarantees that it ain't going to be turmoil. You know, there's stuff brewing in South Africa. You know, there's stuff brewing in Kenya. You know, there's always something brewing in the Congo. Uganda. You know, I mean, you got these territories. You got Ghana, you know, economical issues. You know, people upset because, you know, they can't get gas. You know, you know. But see, if you go to the continent with the Ruach HaKodesh of Yahuah and the Masor of the Torah of Truth, looking to bring the Torah of truth to liberate your people, right? Introduce them to the witness of Yahusha Mashiach, not that Zeus, not that Jesus, not that Jesus, earth big, earth, not that, but Yahusha Mashiach, going to the continent, yeah, okay, yeah, you gonna be taken care of. Right? He says here. Right. He says here. Then answered he me and said, things present are for things present. Right? Things to come for such to come. There are things that you're going through in your present time that are for your time. But there's prophecies that are things that are to come, that are yet to come. You're just between the heel and the hand. You just in the 5th week. It's 10 weeks of time. Right? There is 10 weeks of time. He says, listen, for thou comest far short. Right? You come far short, Ezra. Right? Thou comest far short. That thou lovest, that thou that thou shouldest be able to love my creature more than me. Listen, Ezra, there's no way in the world you're going to love these people more than me. Far short. Right? You understand as you understand. See, you don't have my mind. You don't know my thoughts. You don't understand what I have intended for this people. Right? It's not for everybody. It's for a few that's going to want to do and keep my Torah, who's going to want to hear the witness, the Basora of truth, a Basora of their Yeshua, right? The good news, the word of truth, and be sealed with the Ruach HaKodesh promise. Those that love me are going to be the ones that keep my commandments. They're the ones that are going to receive my name. They are the ones who this eternal life is prepared for. And again, this eternal life is not, it is, but it's not the reign of Yahushua HaMashiach when he comes to return. That's a different event. That's an event prior to the eternal life, right? Right now, when Yahuwah comes, we're going to be changed. We who remain are here that are going to serve him in the kingdom. Yeah, we're going to be changed so that we can do what he needs us to do in the Eretz. Because Yahusha was changed. In the Eretz, we're going to be changed if we are at his appearing when he comes and establishes and gathers his people. We going to be there. We gonna be in. But listen, the immortality that Ezra wants is going to happen at the new heaven and the new earth. That's going to happen at the point when Yahuwah finishes the earth off and he has the judgment. And if your name is in the Lamb's Book of Life, then you good. If it ain't, you going to that place where Hasatan is, right? He says this. We gonna bring it to a close here. He says, "For thou camest far short, that thou shouldest be able to love my creature more than me, more than I. But I have oftentimes drawn nigh unto thee, and unto it, but never to the unrighteous. We're going to stop there. So he's telling Ezra, listen, you ain't going to never love my people like I love them, right? And I've oftentimes drawn nigh to you and them. But the unrighteous, I ain't drawn near to them. I don't even have them in my equation. Yahuah is not drawing near to the wicked. They don't fall in his equation. Man of Yah, woman of Yah, we gonna stop there. And listen, you know tomorrow's Shabbat. Right? Man, tomorrow's the Shabbat. I love the Shabbat. You know, there are only, other than doing this for Yahuah, participating in his Shabbat, fellowshipping with the righteous believers, right? I love Yahuah. I love his work. Next to that, man, it's everything else is, you know, I love riding motorcycles too. I do love riding motorcycles. But that's after the Yahuah and all the rest of that stuff, you know. You know, I mean, I live for this, man. I'm going in like this because I want Yahuwah's word to go forth. I want those whom he has chosen to receive his word to hear his word. See, I want to produce fruit. I want Yahuwah to look at me and say, well done, my good faithful servant. You know. I gave you this and you were faithful over it. Enter to your rest. New heaven, new earth. Every day will be Shabbat. We will experience Shiloh. We will experience rest. That's why I do this. That's why I do this. Yahuah, in the name of Yahusha Mashiach, I give you praise for your Besorah, your Torah of truth. I give you praise and I thank you for counting me worthy to be a heralder of the Besorah in the Torah of truth, to be used to tell your people your word, to say, this is what Yahuwah says. Hear ye, hear ye. Yahuwah, I give you praise. I give you praise. Yahuwah, I pray that they would receive your word in Emunah, that it would be a lamp unto their feet and a light unto their pathway, that they would be established in the truth, right? You are the truth. Yahuwah, strengthen your heritage. Redeem your heritage. Make alive your heritage. Yahuwah, this I ask. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Yahuwah, my strength and my redeemer. Man of Yah, woman of Yah, called to greatness. Woman of Yahuwah, beautifully, wonderfully made. Today Yahuwah's favored you. Listen. Can't nobody do me like Yahusha. Can't nobody do me like Yahuwah. Can't nobody do me like Yahusha. He's my friend. Listen, man of Yah, woman of Yah, you better get on board. You better receive the witness. You better be born again of the water of Ruach HaKodesh. You better receive the Ruach HaKodesh, water of the blood. Because he's giving Yeshua to cause you to live and to experience his eternal life. With that I say, shalom, 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 and pre-Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Be blessed.
Torah guardian, speaking the absolute truth. Torah nation.